friends, Katie here. I'm back to do my August reading wrap-up. I'm talking a little bit more quietly than I did in my last video just because Fox is now down for a nap. And like I said before, we're potty training him, so nap time is an interesting experience because we're going diaperless, and that makes nap time interesting. Like I said, I am shocked that I read as much as I did because at the beginning of the month I really didn't feel like I was gonna get that much done because it was taking me a long time to read some of the books, mostly because of the Olympics. That's what I blame it on. I would sit down in front of the Olympics with my book and the Olympics took precedent most nights. I guess I'll try and go through the books from my least favorite to my most favorite. So my least favorite book this month was maybe my least favorite book from this year, and that is The Girls by Emma Cline. The premise of this book is that it's about a teenage girl who gets caught up in a Manson family-like cult. But it's less about the cult and more a character study about Evie. But this was just really not the book for me, and it was more a case of, it's not you, it's me. I have never liked or connected with books about angsty teenage characters, and this book is like the quintessential book about angsty teenage characters, and I just can't stand them. I felt while reading this book a lot like I felt while reading the classic book, The Catcher in the Rye. Holden Caulfield absolutely drove me insane in that book, and I felt very similarly reading this book. I didn't like Evie, I didn't like her angstiness. The angstiness that I don't connect with has often to do with teenagers who do lots of drugs and have lots of sex and hate their parents and hate the establishment and fall in with other teenagers, or in this case, a deranged cult leader, who are also doing these same things that, you know, together they spiral out of control. I really, really don't like it. To me, it reeks of entitlement and self-pity and self-destruction in ways that I just don't like to read about it. Apart from the general angstiness of the book, I found the content very unsettling in general, which isn't necessarily a critique because I can handle unsettling books. I can handle books that deal with hard themes and difficult topics. I mean, I love a good mystery and thriller, so it's not that necessarily. There was some other content that disturbed me in ways that I find unhelpful at this time in my life. I don't want to spoil anything, but the scene when they describe the murders, there's one particular part of it that I just have a really hard time stomaching because I'm a parent, and that's all I'm going to say, which maybe is spoiler enough for you, but I just really had a hard time with it. So I gave it 2 stars for the great writing that did feel overwrought and self-conscious to me at times, but it was very good, and another star for the fact that I did want to see how it ended. But apart from that, I found nothing else redeemable. I didn't find any of the characters redeemable. I didn't find any of the plot points redeemable. It just wasn't the book for me. So every other book on this list is quite a step up from the last. The first one I'm going to talk about is Paris, Paris by David Downie. I've been reading this book for months. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I started this maybe all the way back in April. I mean, it's been a long time. It's a collection of essays about Paris. Some of them I really, really enjoyed. Some of them I didn't get anything out of. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but I feel like if you're familiar with Paris, if you've been to Paris, if you know the city, I think you might get a lot more out of this book. The writing was very evocative and beautiful, but there were moments where I found myself really bored and wishing that I knew and could visualize the places that he's talking about better, and wished that I remembered some of my French cultural history back from middle school and high school when I was learning about France. So yeah, I think that this was another case of it's not you, it's me. I think that this book has a lot of value, and if I ever do get the chance to go to France, then I'll probably revisit this book with fresh eyes. Next, I want to mention Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. I didn't hate this book. There have been so many negative reviews about Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. I had very ambivalent feelings about this book, but I didn't go into this book expecting to be blown away. The experience of reading this for everyone has been very different because it's not a novel, it's in it's a script, it's in play format, and so things aren't going to feel more fleshed out. Now, I know that there are a lot of people who disliked this book who have read a lot of plays. I haven't read a lot of plays, but I did go in thinking, okay, we're not going to get a lot of background, we're not going to get a lot of emotion from any of the characters, and because of that, I didn't expect to get those things. I didn't expect to be swept away into the world in the same way that the Harry Potter stories do. So yeah, I think I got out of it exactly what I expected. Nothing great, nothing awful, just something kind of in between. One thing that I do want to say is, after reading the book, I went and I looked up a bunch of reviews for the actual stage performance, and I have not read one negative review of the stage performance. So I really do think that there's something to be said for the fact that this is a play meant to be seen, not read. And in some ways, I wish that's just the way they would have kept it. I wish they wouldn't have released the book, because apparently the experience of viewing it and not reading it is entirely different. So yeah, you're not going to get from me like a bunch of hate. I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I enjoyed parts of it, I disliked parts of it. And ultimately, I was really glad to be able to return to these characters and these settings that I love, even if it wasn't, you know, everything in the world that I would have wanted from an 8th Harry Potter book. I did a buddy read with a bunch of lovely Booktube ladies. Kate Howe from her channel, Joce from Squibbles Reads, Elena from Elena Reads, I think, Kate from the novel Nomad, and then Sarai Talks Books started out reading it and then DNF'd it. And am I forgetting anyone? I'm so sorry if I'm forgetting someone. There were a lot of us. But together we read the thriller In a Dark, Dark Wood. I loved reading this book with these women. Their insights were spectacular, and it really made the reading experience a lot richer, even though none of us left the book feeling like this was a great thriller. To me, it was sort of an average thriller, and I know I've said this before, I'm not super informed about the genre, but I'm getting there because I've read a few in the last couple months. And I liked this. I didn't think it was spectacular, but kind of like Harry Potter, I didn't think it was awful either. It was very predictable, but the predictability didn't bother me. It bothers some people, but I am so bad at figuring out the whodunit aspect of mysteries that the fact that I was able to figure this out in the book pretty early on was really satisfying for me, because I don't get that pleasure very often. But what I didn't love about the book is kind of what the other ladies have already said in their wrap-ups. The pacing at the end was just a little off. The beginning was very fast-paced, I wanted to find out what happened, and then all of a sudden, towards the second half, it just really started slowing down. And because you kind of knew how it was going to end, it just didn't pull you forward the way it did at the beginning. So yeah, so I enjoyed reading this. It wasn't a perfect thriller, but I'm glad I read it, and I'm especially glad that I read it with those women, because it was a lot of fun. Finally, we get into the 4-star books that I read this month, the first of which was the 3rd book in the Raven cycle. This one is Blue Lily Lily Blue. So in the last book, we kind of followed Ronan more than any of the others. In this book, we kind of follow Blue more than any of the others. I don't want to say too much since this is the 3rd book in a 4-book series, but just sort of generally, we're getting closer to finding the Welsh king, Glendower, this sort of mythical but more historical figure that Gansey, who's one of the Raven boys, has been searching for. And it's getting all mixed up with some of the other characters in the book, like Blue's mom, who's gone missing in this book. So part of the search in this book is to find and recover Blue's mother. That's all I'm going to say. But I will also say that this book sort of finally hooked me on the series. This one really grabbed me and hooked me and tugged at my heartstrings in some new ways. So I really enjoyed this and am looking forward to finishing up the series. The next 2 books that I'm going to mention were both buddy reads with my friend Julie from A Girl in a Book. I have loved reading books with her. It's just been so much fun, partly because we just end up chatting about life and I've gotten to know her so much better, and it's just been a really good time. I think this next book that I'm going to mention I liked a little more than Julie did. I found it a little more absorbing, and I liked the mystery, and I think she was a little bit more disappointed. But nevertheless, I think we both still enjoyed reading the book together, and that is The Likeness by Tana French. This is the 2nd book in her Dublin Murder Squad series, and A lot of people like this one better than her first book in the series, In the Woods. And I think Julie both agree that we liked In the Woods better. Where the two books overlap, in my opinion, is that Tana French's murder mysteries in this series are very character driven. They're not super plot driven. There is an engaging plot, I feel, in both of the books, but it's more about the detectives and their backstory and what they deal with throughout the investigation than the mystery that they're trying to solve. So in this book, the premise is very outlandish. I think that if you can get over the outlandishness of the premise, then you really enjoy the ride. So this book follows a detective that we meet in the first novel, In the Woods. Her name is Cassie Maddox. The book opens when they discover a body in this little cabin, and the body of this woman who's been murdered looks exactly like Cassie Maddox. So they discover that this woman's name is Lexi, and they have Cassie go undercover to take over Lexi's place in this house that she's been living at and act like she is Lexi. What I docked a star for me, what I was disappointed in this book was the fact that this is character driven, it's about Cassie, but I never felt like I understood her motivations in this book. She lied, she hid things from her superiors in terms of what she was discovering while she lived in the house. She lost herself inside this character of Lexi and this sort of fantasy world that she was living in. And I never understood exactly why it was that she was doing that. There was something that happened in the previous book that really screwed her up. But I never really got what that was and why it was that it screwed her up, if that makes any sense. But it was never really clear to me, and that was my big complaint with this book. Other than that, I really enjoyed it. I just didn't enjoy it quite as much as I enjoyed In the Woods. And Tana French's writing, as usual, was excellent. This is an excellently written thriller mystery. And finally, Julie and I have decided to read every Robin Hobb book in the Six Duchies realm together. Currently, we're on Royal Assassin, or we just finished Royal Assassin this month. This was a hefty book. It took me a long time to feel like I was actually going to love this book. It started out very slow, but I ended up really loving it. Like the first book, this is a character-driven novel, a character-driven fantasy novel, which I feel like is a little bit unusual, but that's one of the things that I love about this series so much, is that you become so invested in these characters. I love them, or I hate them at equal parts. It depends on what character it is. I really, really hate the character Regal. I'm not a hateful person, so when I find a character that I absolutely despise, I really, really credit it to the author's ability to develop a character that inspires that kind of passion in me. I hated Regal like I hate Professor Umbridge from the Harry Potter series, and in some ways it makes a lot of sense to me why I despise these characters so much in equal measure. They're both ruthless, spiteful, and hateful people, and both take pleasure in the pain and torture of others. And yeah, they're the kind of characters that you love to hate. The character of Regal is one of the reasons I didn't want to put this book down, because I needed to know what happens. I feel like at the end, it was the slow pace at the start was necessary to make the ending as exciting as it was, because it set everything else up. You ought to know the characters so much better because of the slowness at the start, that it made the ending more satisfying. Overall, I really, really, really loved this book, and I've been so impressed with Robin Hobb so far. I'm so excited to keep going in the series. So those were all the books I read in the month of September. I cannot believe I read 7 books. Yeah, 7 books. That's crazy, folks. That's crazy. That's not normal for me. I hope you guys are doing great, and it's always so fun to talk to you about your experience of reading any of these books, or what books you're reading and enjoying, or read and enjoyed in August. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys more in the comments. So like, comment, and subscribe if you liked this video, and I will talk to you guys later.